Hi, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com and welcome to episode 42 of my video train blog series. Okay, so today's episode is going to be a bit of a how-to video. I just got a shipment in today of some new train display shelves, and those shelves are made by a company called Schneider Display Systems. I've already used a lot of their shelving on my layout and I really like it, so I figured that this would be a good opportunity to show you how their shelving system works and how I install it. So let's go ahead and get started. I've already talked about my shelving in a couple previous blog episodes, but for those of you in the audience who are new, let me take a minute and explain what's going on here. I've got two types of shelving for my trains. The first type is right here. This is the Schneider shelving, and that's what we're going to be installing today. I really like the Schneider shelving for several reasons. First of all, it is specifically made for O-scale trains. It's even got the 3 rails on it so that the trains on the shelf are sitting just as they would if they were on track. It's very open so you can really see the trains, and yet it's very, very sturdy. So I really like it, but it does have one disadvantage, and that is that it cannot go down low, because I have small children that visit the layout from time to time, and if you have trains on an open shelf that are within reach of a small child, that's just asking for an accident. So when it comes to having shelving that's down low, I build it myself, and here's an example of that right here. I built this from wood from the Home Depot, and it's a shelf of nothing but SD70s. And it goes all the way down to the floor, and it can do that because it's got a plexiglass door on the front of it. And it's the same story over here. Now, this set of shelves does not go as far down as the previous one, but it's the same story. I have not yet put the plexiglass doors on the front of this thing, but I will be doing that before the next open house. So like I said, today we're going to be installing some new Schneider shelving. So let's go take a look at what the UPS truck dropped off. Okay, here's the shipping tube that the Schneider shelves arrived in today. Made in USA, that's always a good thing. So let's go ahead and take them out and I'll show you how to install one of them. I've unpacked the shelves and this is what we've got. Now, I ordered enough shelving to have 7 new shelves in the train room. The way it works is that the default shelf length from Schneider is 6 feet. So the top shelf there is that 6-foot length. I ordered one of them, and that was $15 for O-scale. Then, if you want a custom cut to get the shelf to a specific length, they charge you $1 per cut. So the next 2 shelves down, I had them cut at 5 feet. And you can see the 1-foot piece of scrap for each of those 2 shelves. So that was $15 for each shelf plus $1 per cut. That was $32 for those 2 shelves, or $16 a piece. And then the next 2 shelves down, I had them cut at 42 inches. So again, 2 shelves, 2 cuts, $32. So 32 plus 32 plus 15 for the top shelf is $79, which is not that bad for this much shelving. It's really a pretty good price. Each of these shelves is made from a single piece of aluminum, and they're really quite strong, but I'll talk more about that in a few minutes when we install one of these shelves. Now up here, I've got some of the end caps that I bought. The end caps go on the ends of each shelf, and they give you a nice smooth plastic end to each shelf instead of that sharp metal edge, and they also keep the trains from accidentally rolling off the end of the shelf. Now again, the end caps are sold separately, and they cost $3.50 a piece. The last thing you get when you buy Schneider shelves is a whole bunch of these. They're free whenever you buy the shelves, and these are connecting pins, and they're used to connect shelves together. I said that the default length of the shelves was 6 feet, so what if you want a shelf that's 8 feet long or 12 feet long? Well, you have to connect 2 shelves together, and that's what these are for. Now, I'm not going to be using these connector pins for my installation today, but I will show you how to use these during this video nonetheless. Okay, now I'm going to be installing all of these new shelves in the stairwell coming down into the layout room. So let's go up into the stairwell now, and I'll show you how to install one of these shelves. For this video, I'm going to be installing one of the 42-inch shelves. We're in the stairwell, and this is where I'm going to be installing those 2 42-inch shelves. Now, as you can see, I've already installed a bunch of shelves on this wall, so I'm just adding to what I already have. So the first thing I need to do is to make marks at the level where I want to put the new shelf. Now with these existing shelves, I made them so that the distance from the bottom of the shelf to the top of the next shelf is 5 1/4 inches. So I'm going to take my little ruler here and find 5 1/4 inches, which is right there. Make a little mark. And I'll come over here and I'll do it again. And then over here, 5 1/4. And that should be good. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take a yardstick and connect the dots. Now, when I first started doing this, I would use a level right here to connect these dots, but that's really unnecessary because when I start installing the shelf, I'm going to use a level on the shelf to make sure the shelf is straight. So this is just a general guideline. It's not the absolute place where the shelf is going to be. It's just to let me know where to start. So I'm going to line up these dots as best I can. And connect them like that. And there we go. Okay, so here's one of my 42-inch shelves. And as you can see, I've already put the end caps on. So if I line it up right here with that line that I made with the yardstick, that's where it's going to be when it's complete. So the next thing I need to do is to locate the studs behind this wall, because the way that these Glenn Schneider shelves work is that you have to anchor them into the studs behind the wall. You cannot, and I repeat, you cannot use wall anchors to mount these shelves, because if you do, the weight of the trains will be too much. It'll rip the wall anchors right out of the drywall, the shelf will collapse, and your trains will be ruined. You have to anchor them into the studs in the wall. The more studs, the better. So with a 42-inch shelf like this, I want to anchor it into 3 or 4 studs. With a 6-foot shelf, I would probably want to anchor it into 4 or 5 studs. Again, the more studs, the better, the sturdier the shelf will be. So with this 42-inch shelf, I want to find all of the studs between here and here. Now, fortunately, I've already hung shelves on this wall, so I already have markings as to where the studs are located. But if I didn't, I would just use my handy little stud finder to find the studs. No big deal. So what I'm going to do now is take my little ruler again and make markings as to where the studs are located. So I know there's one right over here, and I know there's one right here. And what I'm doing is I'm just making a little vertical line that intersects that horizontal line that I made, so that X marks the spot. That's where the stud is located. And there's another one right here. And then the last one is over here. Yeah. So now I will take my shelf and put it back on the wall here, and I'm going to make markings on the shelf as to where the studs are located so that I know where to drill the holes for the screws. So there's one right here, there's one right here, there's one right here, and then lastly, at the very end, there's one right here. So now we'll go down into the main room and drill holes where I made these markings. Okay, when we drill the holes in the shelf, we're going to drill in from the back. So what I want to do is, with those markings that I made, I'm going to transpose them over to the back. So I can see the marking on top here, and I'm just going to put it on the back so that I can see it when I'm drilling in from the back. And there's another one here. And there's another one right here. And there's another one right here. Okay, so now I'm going to drill these holes. I'm drilling these with a 11/64 inch bit. And when you look on the back side, they have a line scribed into the back where you drill. That's the center point of the drill. So I'm going to line that up with my pencil mark and that scribed line and drill a hole. There we go. Now I'll do the next one. Sometimes it might help to turn it upside down like that a little bit. There we go. And I'll drill this one now. Go. And lastly, I'll drill this one here. Okay, there we go. Now if there's any flashing on those holes, you can scrape it off with a file or something like that, but they're pretty good. So let's go back up into the stairwell and screw this onto the wall. Okay, I've got my shelf back in place and we are ready to secure it to the wall, and in doing so secure it into the studs behind the wall. So to screw it into the studs, I'm going to use these. These are 2.5-inch drywall screws, coarse thread drywall screws. I like them, they go right through the drywall and into the wood. So I'm going to start off by securing this end first and then we'll work our way down. Okay, I've got the first screw in, and with the first screw what I do is I don't tighten it down all the way because I want the shelf to hinge a little bit as I make adjustments as I go down the line. So the next screw is going to go in right here. So what I want to do is, here's my level, and I want to just adjust it so it's right on the bubble. That's good right there. So the next screw is going to go in right there. Just like that. Now it's a lot easier because I've got 2 screws in. I don't have to hold the shelf up anymore. So we'll move on down the line. Make sure we're nice and level. And put the next screw in. And you'll be able to feel it when you go into the stud. If you don't feel it, if it pokes right through the drywall, it means you missed the stud and you need to do another hole and find where the stud is so that you get the screw into the stud. There we go. And now the final screw down here. There we go. Once the shelf's in place, the last thing I do is go back to that first screw that I did not completely tighten and just get in there tight, and now we're done. So now the shelf is in place. Before I put any trains on it, I'm going to come with a damp cloth that I've put some 409 on and just come back here and wipe up all those pencil marks that I made. And there we go. And this is now a very sturdy shelf. It is anchored into 4 studs. This shelf is not going anywhere. So even though it may look like it's not very sturdy when you first see it, it is in fact very, very sturdy. You can put any train you want on this shelf and it's not going anywhere. So let's go ahead and put some trains on this shelf. I'm going to put 2 of my Lionel Norfolk Southern Heritage diesels on this shelf. So I'll put one right here. And we'll put the little Erie SD70 right here. And 42 inches is just about the perfect length for 2 full-size scale diesels. I'm going to have a little leftover space with these 2 diesels, but that's okay. That allows a little extra just in case I wanted to put something really big on there. But there we go. Looks great, and again, very sturdy. One of the nice things about these shelves is that they're actually not perfectly level. They're angled back ever so slightly, and that allows you to put an engine on there without the shelf tipping forward any. They're very, very well designed, and again, very, very sturdy. So that's all there is to it. Something that we did not do in today's project, but that I do want to show you, is the use of these connector pins that I showed you earlier. The way they work is they are used to connect 2 shelves together to make one continuous shelf. So here I've got a 30-inch piece, and then I've got a scrap little piece right here that's about 6 or 8 inches long. And I'm just going to tack it on to the end of the 30-inch shelf to show you how these connecting pins work. If you look at the shelves, there are 3 rails for a 3-rail O-scale train, and these connecting pins fit around those rails, and then they connect the rails on the 2 shelves together so that you get one complete shelf. If we take a look at one of these pins, you can see that there's a slot down the middle, and that allows these pins to mount onto the rails on the shelves. But when we first get the pins, they're very narrow in the middle, and we have to widen them a little bit so that they'll fit around the rails. But we don't want to widen them too much because we want it to be a nice snug fit on the rails. So to widen the pins, I use 3 tools. A hammer, some sort of a wrench, I'm using a little channel lock here, and then a punch. So what I'll do is I'll take the punch and I'll put it in one end of the pin, and then I'll give it a couple of good whacks like this. You don't want to overdo it because you don't want to spread the pins too far apart and have it be a loose connection when you put it on the rails on the shelf. So 2 whacks is usually good enough to have a nice snug fit. And now I'll do the same thing for the other side. 1, 2. And then I'll use the wrench again to pull it off the punch. And there we go. So now it's just wide enough on each end to fit onto the rails, but not too wide so that it won't be loose. And so we're going to do the same thing for the other 2 pins. Okay, with the pins now spread apart a little bit, we can now fit them on the rails on the 30-inch piece. And they're not going to fit all the way. You don't want them to. We're going to have to hammer them in place. And that'll give them a nice tight fit. So we'll just kind of put them in place like that. And then I'll grab my little hammer and get them on there. And you want to hammer them down about halfway. Probably needs to go a little bit more. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to take that little 6 or 8 inch piece that I want to add on to the 30-inch piece and stick it on the open end of those pins. And again, it's not going to slide right down. You want it to be a nice tight fit, so I'm going to put it like that and now give it a few whacks with a hammer. This is why I like to do this on a concrete floor, because it makes it a lot easier to hammer this down. If you tried it on wood, you would damage the wood. And there we go. I've hammered it so it's got a nice tight seam, and these shelves are now connected. So now that we've got these 2 pieces connected, how do we go about mounting this to the wall? Well, these connecting pins are not meant to provide support. The only purpose for these pins is to connect the shelves together to make one longer shelf. In terms of support, you have to treat these 2 pieces like separate shelves. So that means that this piece needs to be anchored into the studs, and this piece needs to be anchored into the studs. Now, that may be a bit of a trick with a piece this small. It may be hard to find the stud spacing to provide anchorage for this piece and anchorage over here at the same time. But I'm just trying to make a point that when you connect two shelves together, both of those sides need to be anchored into the studs. One last thing that I want to say about these shelves is that if you are considering purchasing and installing these Glenn Schneider shelves, make sure that before you install them, you read the official installation instructions that are on the Glenn Schneider website. Don't go just by what I'm saying in this video. I've installed a couple dozen of these shelves, and so I have tweaked the instructions a little bit to meet my needs. If you're doing it for the first time, don't go by what I'm saying. Read the official instructions that are on the Glenn Schneider website. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this little how-to video. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time.